Thank you, Mr. Katulka. This is an unusual year for us, or an unusual biennium, because we have a composite index change in the middle of it, which we've never experienced before. Typically, the composite index is set for the 2 fixed years, and you can count on that for the duration. But because of the Clifton Forge reversion agreement in the 15-year term, that expires at the end of the 18-19 school year, fiscal year. So that leaves us a second year when our state funding is going to reduce significantly because of that change. And because of that, decisions that the board makes regarding our budget for next year have to be done with an understanding of the implication of the second year when the composite index reduces, because it may look like we're doing pretty well for the next fiscal year and we make expenditure decisions based on that, and then the second year we lose even more because of the composite index change. So this is the first time in my tenure that we've done a 2-year snapshot of a budget to help the board in planning for that eventuality, which is going to come to pass.
If I can add one thing, that when you look at the bottom line, you can see that at the end of this next fiscal year, we have a surplus. Okay? But if we decide to use that surplus in 1 year, we create a larger deficit for the second year. Okay? And so we have to look at that over a 2-year period because it's part of the operating budget. So as Mr. Rice goes through it, you'll see that as we get towards the end of it.
So on our state money, the first column here is the current fiscal year, 2017-2018, and these are the state funding amounts that come right off the state calc tool that we're submitted, we receive each year. And the main factors on that are your ADM, which this year we're budgeted for 2,080, and we've been very close to that in actuality. And we have the composite index cap of 0.2423. In some years prior, we've actually gone below that and reaped the benefit of that, but the highest it could ever go because of the reversion agreement was to 0.2423. And based on that, you'll see the main components of standards of quality, the basic aid, the sales tax, and so on and so forth. I won't read all that for you. It totals up in our current budget of $12.9 million. For next year, for the 18-19 year, based on the governor's budget, again, we still have the House will submit theirs, then the Senate will submit theirs, and then they'll have their committee membership and come out with the final numbers with which we'll ultimately base our final budget to submit to the Board of Supervisors. But this is the governor's budget, and we have assumed an average daily membership of 1,997. That does factor out the boys' home students, as the superintendent mentioned earlier. We still have the 0.2423 cap, and you can go down and see the various amounts by line for the standards of quality. And we actually receive more money due to the re-benchmarking. When they re-benchmark every biennium, they recalculate average weighted salaries and a number of other formulas, transportation costs, health insurance costs, things like that. They all go into the funding formulas to generate how much each division gets. So thanks to the re-benchmarking, we're actually having the pain of a lower enrollment and a lower composite index offset somewhat because of that. So you'll see we do there, and that's a positive variance of almost $285,000. In the second year of the biennium, when we also project a further decline in enrollment, and that 133 is based to current, that's not year to year. And again, that's incorporating the boys' home loss. 1,947 students, but again, the higher composite index, which means that the locality pays almost 29% of the funded formula for the cost of public education, bearing in mind that the state's funding formula does not account for all the costs or all the employees we have to educate our students.
Why did the composite index go up so much?
It's based on the local composite index formula. It's a comparative of local sales tax, real estate valuations, income.
What were we informed by the Department of Education on the change of what? Personal property? The property?
It went up 14.7% just there.
Property value in Alleghany County went up 14% versus the rest of the state. It's a comparison, and it's 2 years behind.
It is.
So in the big pie, our property value went up higher than other places. And so hence, when that happened, okay, which we investigated and
Twice.
yes, we were surprised too, and so that's why it went up as high.
What is our current local composite index without the reversion factor in it?
I don't have that right here with me, Mr. Persinger. It's higher than the .2423, I do know that.
And then, of the 83 students, how many of those are boys home students?
52.
When you said that the composite index over the past few years has gone lower than the .2423,
And not in the last couple, but a few years back, it actually did go lower than that. It was at .2121 at one time.
and when was that?
It would have been 4 or 5 years ago, I think, and I'm pulling that off the top of my head. I can certainly get you that exactly if you would
I
like.
think it
that.
was closer to 8 years ago.
So around 2007, that, after 2007.
Yeah, I mean, it again, since it's a 2-year lag and the bottom of the economy dropped out, we would have had to benefit for 2 years. So, it'd probably been in the 2011 timeframe. And again, that's, I'm just pulling it off the top of my head. I can
But
provide
the
that for
state
you.
is actually saying that our land values and our property values went up considerably compared to the rest of the Commonwealth.
What happened, I imagine, is the property value in Northern Virginia dropped. Okay, when that happened, that created ours to go up, not that there was a change. And so 2 years from now, when the property value in Northern Virginia goes back up, then our value will go back down.
And if you'll recall, a number of years ago, as part of the effort to study consolidation, the 2 school boards engaged the company, and I can't remember the name of the company, but one of their primary representatives was Dick Salmon from Virginia Tech. And he actually was very uncannily accurate in his forecast of what would happen to the composite index rates because of the economic fallout of 08, 09. And so eventually, I anticipate at some point we'll start to decline again. But again, with the 2-year lag in the data they use, it makes a real-time comparison difficult to do.
Do you know what Covington's composite index is?
I know it's gone up. I don't know exactly what it is off the top of my head.
And their real property value went up higher than ours did.
Is it just real property or is it also personal property? that's going
Real
up?
property. I may have said personal, I apologize.
Earlier, I think you
I'm sorry.
included both.
I meant just real property.
Okay, just real property.
And again, it's a formula that computes sales tax, real estate, real property values, income, and then it compares the locality to the state averages, and that's, it drills down from there to arrive at the composite index, or our ability to pay.
Our actual run right now is .2568.
Thank you.
And that changes every 2 years?
Every 2 years, except in our case this year with that anomaly of the 15-year term coming to an end, which is why we're looking at a 2-year snapshot because of that. And that's what's made it necessary. Anything else? Okay, so we start to see the impact in basic aid. We're picking up some next year, but then you see the decline. And again, these are compared to 2018, our current year. So our SOQs will see a decline of $590,000 because of the composite index change. And that also includes the additional loss of students. I think, approximately 50. So that's a combination of the two. You'll scroll on down through. Again, the same thing. I want to point out here, there's $106,963 budget under compensation supplement. In order to receive that money in the second year, we have to certify that over the term of the biennium, we have 2 years to do it, that we provided an average 2% salary increase to employees in order to qualify for that money. If we do not do that, we forfeit that $106,963, and we have to reflect that going forward if we opt not to do that.
And one thing I forgot to mention, the assumptions, we put a 1% raise in for staff this year and a 1% raise for staff next year, which takes up to 2%.
And And each percent is about $110,000, is that?
Actually, we'll get to that in a minute if we'll deal with that here in a second. It's 100 and...
72.
Thank you. And it's actually based, it turns out to be an average of slightly over 1%. It's based on a step increase on our new scale and people at the top of the scale getting 0.25%. Positions not on a scale like bus drivers getting a 1% increase.
So we are planning to give them a step increase like we promised?
That's
Yes.
correct.
Okay.
Both years.
Academic Governor School, since we received that money and have another entity manage that fund for us, or manage that program for us, rather, the YMCA, I showed that as a pass-through because we received those monies and moved them on. We net that out to, at the bottom, to show the true impact to our operating fund expenses.
Ms. Morgan, the yellow is pass-through money that we get, and then we just give to others.
Same for school lunch, the preschool initiative. And I'm sorry, the Y does preschool initiative, that's the governor's school. At risk. Then the VPSA technology money, which is generated by the sale of bonds, that's for technology, equipment, hardware, and there's a defined limit on what it can be used for that Mr. Allman and Ms. Moosball monitor closely. And it's based on, typically, the way the formula works is each division gets $50,000 plus $26,000 plus per school. For the last 15 years, we've been getting an additional $50,000 because of the Clifton Forge reversion. So we got $50,000 for Alleghany, $50,000 for Clifton Forge, and $26,000 per school, which includes JRTC and the governor's school, and we receive that money and transfer that to them, or we have to record it on our books. And the second year of the biennium, the $50,000 from Clifton Forge goes away, so we have a $50,000 reduction in that money, which is why you see the variance there. The next category, the categorical programs, not a lot of funding that applies to us in there. You'll see school lunch, again, that transfers to the cafeteria fund, is managed by Ms. Paxton, and homebound funds. The homebound funds are down significantly in the standards of quality re-benchmarking, and then they decline not quite as bad because this isn't built off of a composite index formula, so that's why you don't see, that's why you see it's similar both years. The foster care, we currently have $156,658 budgeted in our budget. You'll notice we have 0 for the first year of the biennium, 0 for the second year. Again, that's related to boys' home students, so we've had to factor that out, as we will not receive it, excuse me. And at-risk funding, and the state periodically will split some of these items on whether they want to fund it with incentive money, lottery money, and you'll see that change from time to time when they move around their funding sources. I mentioned the preschool already, the school breakfast program, again, that transfers to the cafeteria, and then the career and technical money, that's money that is typically allocated to JRTC. And that's separate from the $994,000 that the superintendent mentioned earlier that we provide to them. So you see the state total for our current year, and this is before adjustments for pass-through. You see it next year, it nets out to $86,000 favorable, and then you see the large reduction in the second year of $815,000 approximately. And then we net out the pass-throughs, and then our working money, if you will, is going to decline by $79,000 and $801,645 in year 2.
Year 1 actually increases $79,000.
It does. It does. Other state revenues, we received national board certification. That's not changed. We received Medicaid reimbursement. We're projecting that to stay the same at this point. There are some issues related to Medicaid reimbursement that the superintendent and I were privy to today in our meeting in Richmond. I don't think it's going to go away at this point in time, but that was some discussion at one point in time. And if it ever did, that would be something we would have to address. Federal monies at this point in time, since the all the title federal fundings.
Can we go back to have you heard anything about the block grants for Medicaid? because that would make a major change if they go to the block grants. If you pick up anything before I did, all right, because that would affect Medicaid quite a bit. All right, thanks.
It would not be good. Keep going.
I'll get daily updates from the General Assembly. They started yesterday. If I hear me, I'll let you know. Yeah.
My contact.
That'd be great to know that ahead of time. Can you blow that up a little bit?
But she's trying to slide it over and the slide bar is not there, so.
Click on it. Put your cursor on there. It should come up down below.
Didn't.
It just, arrow on it. There you go. All right, and so in federal, until the titles come out and our estimate from the feds, we budget what we have in this year's budget. And since federal monies are reimbursements, we have to spend the money and then request reimbursement. If they reduce the revenue side, we reduce the expenditure side accordingly. So that's going to be a non-impactor. But we do anticipate a slight reduction in E-rate funding, and that's an actual number based on what we have received, what Mr. Allman's received. And as E-rate continues to lessen the amount of funding they give school divisions for telephony, did I pronounce that right, Mr. Allman?
Yes,
And it's more weighted to internet and connectivity like that, we've seen a slight reduction. Forest Reserve, we actually budgeted the full amount for this year. Congress elected not to reauthorize the full funding for the Forest Reserve. So we're actually having to make this amount up this year. And we're projecting that, so for the second year, we're actually budgeting the loss. We're budgeting it in the final year. I think the superintendent has been made aware of an effort underfoot by some congressmen to get that money restored.
33 senators have signed it to restore that as of today. Orrin Hatch is leading the way out of Utah, and he's Republican. I can't think of the Democrat that signed off on it. And so if you're interested in sending a letter to our senators to make sure they're on board with restoring that, it seems like a bipartisan effort, which I think will help. And, again, every 100,000 helps tremendously. So,
Can we write up a letter and have it for our next board meeting that we can all sign?
Absolutely. We were actually talking about working on that.
And let's send it to everybody. Let's explain our piece in Alleghany County.
Ms. Bess, can we come out of this meeting to do a vote of support today? Okay. Because I don't really want to wait 2 weeks to send it.
If you're just doing a letter for everyone to sign, that doesn't mean action unless you want it in the form of a resolution.
All right, let me see if I can put together the next day or two and get it to you all. And so, because these things sometimes are a matter of time, not so much with our federal legislators, but definitely the state legislators. Sometimes from one day to the next day, they move things fast. I'll try to find out the time frame. If it is, I'll get the letter out probably Monday to everybody, and then we'll get it signed and go back. All right, that'd be great.
And for Mrs. Morgan and some of our other newer members, that's also known as PILT, or pay in lieu of taxes, to compensate communities like ours when so much of our land is restricted for taxation because it's federal land. And so now I think
Is that taken into consideration in our in our two?
Formula for local deposit index?
no, not to my knowledge, it's not.
Really?
Doesn't count as any real property. So this started way back in 1905 and it's been ongoing and changed and added to, and they just didn't reauthorize it. So.
And when you go out in Utah, Wyoming, Montana with all the BLM land and the national forests and stuff like that, the impact of them for that
It's
loss of
huge.
reauthorization was a lot bigger than it was for Virginia.
You got Orrin Hatch speaking for it, and he's a outspoken Republican as well. So we got. I wish I could remember.
But isn't he resigning from his seat?
From Utah? He might be
I
retired.
think Mitt Romney's going to be.
He's not
Or
seeking
not running against him, but taking his spot.
he's not seeking re-election.
He's
You're
not
right.
seeking re-election.
He's not seeking re-election.
But
Yeah.
he still can be contacted.
You will right now, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. Until next January.
But it doesn't sound like he's the one we need to contact. We need to
You got Nick Rami.
all the rest of them.
Well, that, plus we can also send it to Mick.
If he.
He'll win.
Win.
I can't imagine him not winning.
All right, so.
Thank you for pointing that out.
So anyway, federal, the impact is limited to these two categories here at this point in time. And again, we have pass-through revenues for the school food reimbursement. That's the bulk of the cafeteria funds. Funding is through the National School Lunch, National School Breakfast funding. The Salem Regional Adult Education Program is the GED program that we serve as the fiscal agent for. That's dollars in and dollar out. So it's a non-impactor. Okay.
We're the fiscal agent, yet they call it Salem?
Yeah, we actually, and poor choice of words, they are the fiscal agent, we actually do the payroll for this person and have to seek reimbursement for it, that's why the money's.
Okay, all right. I thought, I'll be talking to Salem with them.
Yeah. No, we do the payroll for them. The Alleghany County local effort is currently budgeted $9,325,000, and that's where it's budgeted for each of the 2 years in the biennium. At this point in time, we'll address that here momentarily. Miscellaneous other is going to decline by $13,431 for both years due to revenues we have budgeted for miscellaneous reimbursements and miscellaneous refunds that we have not have come to fruition the last 3 or 4 years, so we're going to adjust that to reflect the reality. And so when we get down through all our pass-through adjustments and everything, we have a net loss for fiscal year 18-19, first year of the biennium, of $38,677. And again, had it not been for the reduction in the federal funds, we'd be fine. And in the second year, $919,392. Any questions thus far? Anything you want to chime in?